A dry January. I'm Chief Meteorologist Joe Martucci here at driest 57. Welcome to our monthly Weather Roundup, our exclusive with the New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson, recapping the month of weather that was in New Jersey. We had a ton to talk about. Yes, it was dry, but I think the other thing you'd probably notice is how cold it was as well. We were below average for the month of January, continuing the below average month we saw in December. We put that in context for you. And we also talk about what all of this dry weather meant for drought in the state. And we recap those snow events as well. If you live in Cape May County and you're watching this, you probably liked all that snow on January 6th. This broadcast is brought to you by Community Options Cupid's Chase 5K in Lake Como, taking place at Bar A. Really good place, by the way. On Saturday, January 8th, you can still sign up for the Cupid's Chase 5K in Belmar. We'll have more on that in the episode. And we are going to talk all about January 2025. Join with me as we do it every month. New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. Dr. Robinson, so, when I was thinking about the order of this list, I was actually spending a good amount of time determining what to talk about first, because I feel like we had like three equally important things. It was cold, it was very dry, we had snow, and actually I should even mention too, drought, which goes along with the dry. So I'm going to start with the cold because I think that's what most people are thinking of. Do you think that was a good choice? You can be honest with me.
Probably because it's January.
Okay.
But in the grander scheme of things, it's how dry it was that is more important. But let's start talking temperature.
All right.
I'll tell you what, the big theme for the month is chapped lips.
Yes. Mine are chapped right now. I got my chapstick right here.
It was dry, it was windy, and it was cold.
Yes. It was. I'm going to put some chapstick on right now. You're making me think. Yes, a lot of chapped lips, lots of dry air. Now, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, because we're doing this on the 31st. This was our coldest January since 2014, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now just looking at some places along the shore, if we didn't take this past week into account, I think it would have been the coldest since 2004. But we got a little bit milder in those last couple of days here.
Yep, because 2004 was the one earlier, before 2014. Now our last back-to-back below normal Decembers and Januaries was December 17 and January 2018. But January wasn't as cold as 2014, 24, or this January.
Got it. Okay. And, I really think that late 17, early 18 is like a new bellwether for us. I mean, we had the bays that were frozen. Water temperatures right at the ocean were 33, 34, 35 degrees. Rivers obviously frozen over. People are, I saw in the Navesink River, they were ice sailboat. What do you call it? Ice sailing?
Ice sailing. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing, to be honest with you. But that's something we haven't seen for a persistent period of time, and probably since late 2017, early 2018. What was going on, throughout the month of January? Because, I'll have to say, like the winter forecast, I was saying, I don't know if this was necessarily in the cards here.
No, not necessarily. We tend not to get real cold during a more La Nina-like winter. It tends to be on the milder side because you're cutting off some of the northerly flow. But we didn't this month. A chunk of the polar vortex came down into the eastern 2/3 of the United States. Witness the cold and snow down to the Gulf a week or 10 days ago. And we just had those persistently northerly winds come in. This is weather. It's not climate, if
Right.
you look at it that way. And sometimes things don't break the way one would expect. Now, in terms of how dry it was, and we'll talk about that in a while, that tends to lean dry when you've got a La Nina pattern because you don't get the coastal storms.
Right.
And that was certainly the case here in the mid-Atlantic this month.
Right. I want to talk about some of those really cold temperatures, and let's talk about Sussex County real quick. This isn't a Sussex County show, but geez, I mean, we were in the negative teens and I think even 20s for a few days, right?
Yeah, I mean, in our network, our Wallpack station got down to -17. The night before it had been -16. So
Okay.
we had a handful of consecutive days with below zero temperatures,
Yeah.
not just in the Northwest, but we found that down into central Jersey and even some scattered areas in the Pinelands.
Yeah. Yeah. The Pinelands, we did have, I know we had one day that was below zero, I believe in either Berkeley or Hamilton. Maybe you can correct me, but that's good news because that kills off the southern pine beetle, which is an invasive species. We need the below zero.
Yeah, we do. I've looked at that years back. It's been a few years. I worked with someone at Dartmouth who was studying that. Its question is, was it cold enough, long enough? You want
Okay.
to freeze dry those eggs. And the one interesting thing we've seen, and I looked at some numbers from the Pinelands when I looked in the past, was that our coldest winter temperatures are warming faster than our average winter temperatures.
Yeah.
So it's those extremes. And if frankly, if you look at this cold outbreak this month, maybe you've found one because you're a great sleuth at this. But we didn't break any records on a daily basis, even. We didn't break daily low temperature records. We didn't come close to breaking a record for the month. It looks like it's going to be about 35th, 38th coldest
Yeah.
January going back 130 years. Now, that's
Uh,
unusual for recent years,
yeah.
but we're nowhere close to records.
No, I mean, and I made this point last week, during the midst of this, I said, yeah, it's cold. Like no one's saying it's not cold, but have you noticed we haven't broken any records here? Now, I will say we did tie one in
Okay.
Estelle Manor. Estelle Manor has a fairly long-term observing site. We tied the record coldest high temperature on that Monday at 20 degrees.
Good catch. A good
Yeah.
catch on that. I hadn't looked at those, but
Now, Estelle, I don't, where does Estelle Manor's records like rank in the hierarchy of things? I mean, it's not like an ACY airport or a Newark or a
well,
Cape May.
I can't think. They go back several decades, and they're quite good. But they don't have the longevity of AC Marina or Cape May. I
Yeah.
don't think they're as long as the airport, which goes back into the 50s.
Right.
But this is a cooperative observer station for the National Weather Service, a very dedicated observer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a record. It's a legitimate record, but that was the only one. I mean, just feeding into your point. I mean,
Right.
in this climate changing world that we have and continue to see, yeah, it's going to get cold, but that record cold, we didn't really see any, but we'll get record highs at some point this year. It'll happen.
Yeah, we're getting soft. I guess that's
Yeah,
what
we're
it
getting
is.
soft. Exactly. Hey, I have a stat for you. This kind of blew my mind. So on um yesterday, no, what was the mild day? Wednesday? Wednesday. We got up to 50. Well, we got to 57
Oh,
at
I saw
ACY.
you. Okay, I know. Go ahead.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm going to say, huh?
Uh-huh.
So we got the 53. That was the latest in the year. We got a 53 since 2009. That
Yeah.
seemed kind of crazy. I mean, I don't know. That seemed kind of crazy, but I looked at the records. We get into the 50s on like New Year's Day. There were a lot of New Year's Day. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, your average high is in the low 40s. You get near the coast, maybe the mid 40s. So you'd think sometime during the month, you're going to have a day. And we know winter temperatures are much more volatile. The colder is cold, your differences from normal are much greater, positive and negative in the winter than
Yeah.
your summer temperatures. If you're 5 above or 5 below in the summer, that's the equivalent of like being 10 degrees above or 10 degrees
Sure.
below in the winter.
Sure.
So I agree with you. That is kind of interesting. But yeah, we had several stations get up to 56 degrees. And that's going to be the warmest we saw in the state in January.
So no 60s. That was going to be my next question.
No 60s.
How you probably don't have the stat, but like, is that unusual?
I would say that's a little unusual. I don't have the stats for that, but
Okay.
it's kind of unusual.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's keep it on the cold train here, but we'll go towards the snow. So we did have a South Jersey snow special. Then we
Mm.
had two normal New Jersey-ish kind of snow events, right? So January, excuse me, I'm still recovering a little bit from a
Yeah.
virus after the American Meteorological Society conference, which happens to me almost every time. Anyway, January 6th. Man, that was a really good snowstorm. If you were like from like Ocean City down to Cape May, maybe like Summers Point. Otherwise, it was just a light snowfall. But people were thinking, in the weather world, we're thinking of the winter of 2009, 2010, where we had Snowmageddon in DC, Baltimore, right? I mean, obviously that trend didn't hold, but it was a pretty cool storm for those of you who are watching, down south. That was a good storm.
Oh, absolutely. I call it the I-70 storm because it really started in I-70 out in Kansas, went through Kansas City, St. Louis, through
Yeah.
Kentucky, and down to DC and the Delmarva Peninsula. And it clipped South Jersey. People need to look at a map and see that Cape May County is about same latitude as Washington, DC, Baltimore corridor.
Yeah.
And it was a storm that didn't make that left turn up the coast. It just went straight out to sea, and with that, areas to our south even saw a little more than Cape May. You got down to Lewis, southern Delaware, over into the DC area. Saw quite a bit, as well as out in West Virginia and such.
Yeah, everywhere. And this is according to your website, climate.rutgers.edu. It was 4+ inches from like Galloway and Atlantic County to Vineland and south. That was like the 4-inch line. But you go up to Monmouth County, where I am. I mean, we had like an inch, and that was true for most of Ocean. It was really just a lower, and it was 6+. Once you got to what people would say the Cape May bubble, Dennis, Sea Isle on south, it was cool. I love when my Cape May people get their snow. That's always good.
Well, they don't get it all that often.
No, they do not. And we'll kind of segue into the other two snow events. We had one on the 11th, one on the 19th. Anything you want to add for the Jersey Shore on that one?
Nah, they weren't too notable. But the ground became white, and with the cold air, it stayed around for a while. People say people who love winter weather and all, if it's cold and there's no snow, you say it's a waste of cold. And it was borderline there.
Yeah.
Really up central and north for a while. My neighborhood, we had 3 inches of snow that stayed on the ground for 8 days, and it barely budged because temperatures stayed below freezing. And it was great. Got out on the cross-country skis.
Okay. I was wondering, did you get out on the skis? That's good. So, you should have went down to Cape May after that January 6th one. You can skiing down Washington Street Mall.
Well, you want the truth on the personal side. I have grandchildren in Central Delaware and Annapolis, Maryland, and I took a 90-year-old sled that was my mother's down to visit with them, and we went sledding when there was no snow up here. I was sledding with these 2, 4, and 6-year-old kids down there. So I went south to see the snow, just like everyone along the coast had.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So the kids enjoyed their snowing with their grandpa. It was
absolutely. I think we both enjoyed it. We all enjoyed it equally.
Equally. That's good. A good family bonding moment. I'll just say the 19th, just real quick. That was like kind of your classic nor'easter rain snow line kind of storm. Like most of Ocean County in Atlantic and Cape, they saw less than an inch. You go to Monmouth, getting closer to the turnpike, it was like 2 to 4. And then once you went northwest of the turnpike, it was more like 5 to 9. Now, this wasn't a huge storm, right? But that's like kind of that stereotypical Jersey kind of cutoff that we saw. So,
yeah, absolutely. We couldn't let the Cape May bubble folks take all the snow.
Yeah, right. The Cape May bubble folks, I don't know what day it was. I should have researched this, but I just thought of it. They almost had Bay effect snow. I don't know if you saw this. The clouds were like just missing it to the south. Like, if it was a little bit north, maybe you got a few flakes out of that. That would have been cool.
Yeah, and there were some good ice flows for a little while in the bay.
Yeah.
it's hugging the coast, but even a satellite imagery showed some out in the middle of the bay, and an ice product that's put out primarily for Chesapeake Bay, but goes and shows Delaware Bay as well.
Yeah.
Showed quite a bit of ice, particularly in the northern end of Chesapeake Bay, north of the Bay Bridge.
I saw that.
For that goes quickly with this warm up and all, but there's still no doubt some hanging around there along both those bays.
Sure. Let me ask you this last question, then we'll go to break. With the ice, right? Was that something that we did see on an annual basis and we're just not anymore, or is that just kind of weather being weather?
It's a little bit weather being weather. We're seeing it with less frequency, but it still wasn't an annual occurrence in the past.
Okay, got it. Good to know. All right, we're going to take a break. We have a lot to talk about on the other side. We're going to talk about our dry January, drought, and more. Stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back with your January 2025 monthly.
Whether for love or for fun, join us at Bar A in Lake Como for Community Options Cupid's Chase 5K on Saturday, February 8th. Your entry fee supports housing and jobs for people with disabilities. The Lake Como Run is one of 48 races held simultaneously in 13 states on that day. The race will begin at 10 a.m., rain or shine. The race is fully accessible, plus pet-friendly. All participants will receive a drawstring bag and a medal, as well as t-shirts as supplies last. That's Saturday, February 8th for Community Options Cupid's Chase 5K. Sign up at www.runsignup.com/Cupid's Chase 5K Lake Como. That's www.runsignup.com/Cupid's Chase 5K Lake Como.
Welcome back, everybody. We are recapping the month of January, a very busy month for us here in the state of New Jersey. And join with me, New Jersey State Climatologist, Dr. Dave Robinson. All right, so we talked about the cold, we talked about the snow, but really, as you kind of said, the biggest thing was how much it didn't really snow or rain and how dry it was. A lot of people like to do dry Januaries, to kick off the new year. No drinking for the month. Mother Nature kind of like took the cue out of our book and formed it in her own mold. So, hey, that could be your headline for your monthly recap that you write.
Yeah, I think I'll go with chapped lips. Actually.
Chapped, all right, that's fine. Chapped lips is good too because my lips have been chapped for weeks. But anyway, you told me right before this episode. Looks like we're the third or the fourth driest. Now we're recording this on the 31st. It is raining on the 31st. You want to how much of this is going to count towards the climate record? And could you explain that for people in like 20 seconds? We don't need to dive into it.
The fact is, most of the observers in New Jersey, our co-op observers, observe in the morning. So say at 8 o'clock today, they record that data for the 31st of January. Anything that fell after their observations this morning gets recorded tomorrow morning as February 1st. So, but the airports are midnight to midnight. So ACY and up Newark or whatever, that will be whatever falls throughout the whole calendar day of the 31st. So it's going to tick things up. A couple hundredths of an inch fell earlier this morning. And now we're going to have a little bit more. So let's just say it was a very dry January. It's going to come in third or fourth driest. I don't think nearly enough rain has fallen today to bring us up to fifth. We're going to be running just about an inch for the month. And we normally get closer to 4 inches.
Yeah.
So the beat goes on. We were wetter in December and November, but they were both still below normal. And then, of course, October was a shutout.
Yeah.
And September was the state's third driest September. So we're in a real nasty pattern where this is the 5th consecutive month with below normal precipitation. And it's sneaky. There was snow. So people think, and the ground was snow covered. So, we had precipitation. There was no mud because it was too cold,
Right.
whatever we normally see. But it was because it was frozen, not because there wasn't rain to make mud. I mean, everything, we had enough drought conditions in the fall to raise people's awareness. So hopefully that's carried on. But in the winter, drought can be sneaky.
Yeah, and just feeding into that point too, I think when you look outside and it's gray and it's cold and it's dry, I don't know, you're just not. I mean, dry, yeah, but I guess you're not really thinking of drought, right? I mean, usually you're not in winter, it's just not on your minds. But you're right, it's sneaky, and I said this. I was writing this in a short local column. I said there's really no signal towards a very wet February. Maybe it's average or whatever. But once we get into March, that sun's strong. It starts pulling more moisture out of the ground. And let's just go into drought here. We'll spend a good amount of time on this. We did actually, and I should say, you're on the committee to help say what the status is through the United States Drought Monitor. We actually improved a little bit statewide that first January or that first Thursday in January, which was the 7th, stayed steady for 2 weeks. And then this past Thursday, the 30th, we kind of worsened again. Now, for us at the Jersey Shore, where we're primarily doing it, it's been fairly steady, right?
Right.
We're in that extreme drought, a level 3 of 4 from about Ocean County down south. But for like central Jersey and I think like northeast New Jersey, it worsened there. Either way, the point is New Jersey, all of New Jersey's in drought. It's been in drought for a while. This didn't help. 68% of the states in that level 2 of 4 drought and extreme drought. 34% of the state is in an extreme drought.
You got it. We had to make it drop it down one category in central New Jersey this past week because stream flows are so abnormally low. We knew the precip was low, but we also look at stream flow. We look at ground, at well levels and things like that. And the streams were what convinced our small little group and was agreed upon by the national author that we had to degrade conditions a little bit in central part of the state. We're certainly not looking to degrade the South yet to go from a 3 to a 4. That would, I think, wait another dry month or two. And as we get to spring, as you were mentioning, the state remains in a drought warning, but not a drought emergency. Why go to an emergency now when it basically says people can't water their lawns?
No
But besides that, the reservoirs aren't saying it's exceptional right now. They perked up a little bit in December, and then they've kind of leveled off. But in the last week or two, they've started going down a little. They're still 10+% below normal for this time of the year, but they recovered a little bit as we went to the closeout 2024. But we're going to have to keep a real watchful eye on that in the weeks ahead as well. I like to say the clock is ticking. Back a couple months ago, I said we have the whole winter season.
I remember that.
Things up. Well, now we're halfway through, and it hasn't helped that much. But the window is closing for us to fill these reservoirs by spring, but it's by no means closed at this point. We still have a couple months. We can have some average precipitation, maybe knock out a slightly wetter than normal month. It may not pull us totally out of this, but it's certainly going to improve things and absolutely not worsen them.
So, two thoughts, or a thought and a question. So my statement would be, it's kind of a shame that we're not getting this precipitation now where we could it's easy to fill up these reservoirs because water usage is down. There's not a lot of evaporation, right? My second question is my question for you then is, when we get into, let's say, late March, April, May, like how much above average are we going to have to be with rainfall to pull out of it if we wanted to pull out of it? Like, what are we talking? Are we talking double the average? Are we talking maybe an inch above average? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I would think if we could keep it an inch or two above average, instead of 4 inches of rain, get 5 inches, maybe pop a 6-inch rain. If we don't get very warm real quickly, which would slow down the trees starting to evapotranspire, right, or just the ground to dry up. So if we had a cool April and May with average or an inch or two above average, that would be a real big help. Once you get into summer, even if you go into the summer with a good cushion, if it gets hot and dry for a couple of weeks, you can start really stressing things
Right.
out. So we
Right.
can't talk about that, except for the fact is it would be nice to have those reserves in place should that happen.
Yeah.
So if we don't do that, then we're going to be nervous all throughout the summer. So no emergency whistles or bells at this point. But warning, warning, we are still very dry. We have still not recouped. Groundwater levels are still below average. Streams are flowing slower than average, and the reservoirs are below average.
Have you had any conversations with the Forest Fire Service in regards to controlled burns?
Uh,
And yeah,
Yeah, we actually have a tool to help them assess that for controlled burns, and that is going to be a question as we get over the next couple of weeks.
right.
They can look and see how dry it is, how windy it is, how much precipitation we've had. They can, if they can get a rain on a Saturday that wets things down, they could do a controlled burn on a Monday or Tuesday, even if we haven't had abundant rain. But otherwise, it's going to stymie any controlled burn, which only can portend more problems potentially should the dry weather continue into the summer. So
Right.
these controlled burns are wonderfully managed as best as possible, and they're certainly useful in getting rid of debris, fuel on the forest floors. And it's usually springtime is when it's best to do that, to get rid of what came onto the forest floors during the winter and the previous autumn.
Sure. And then with the drought, so we're in a drought warning right now. You said the next step, if we need to go there, is a drought emergency. When was the last time we had a drought emergency? And are there steps within the emergency, or is it like once you're in the emergency, water restrictions everywhere?
The last time was 2002. That was statewide. It doesn't have to be statewide. And as you said, there can be different restrictions imposed during an emergency on how often you can water, if you can water at all, and other things of that nature, to the point where it could even go down to water rationing in the worst case scenario. So yes, there are qualifications within that emergency spectrum, and that's determined by the Department of Environmental Protection in coordination with the governor's office.
I was actually reading one of the executive orders, and you couldn't even serve water at restaurants unless asked. Do you remember that? I don't. I mean, I was young, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, well, I can remember living up in Northeast Jersey back in 80, 81, and we had water rationing within what was called the Hackensack Water Company at that time. And we were told only 50 gallons a day per person, which
Huh.
may sound like a lot, but it's not.
Yeah.
And at that point also, we didn't have the low flow dishwashers, washing machines. They were trying to get people to put shower heads in with lower flows.
Right.
That was only a portion of the state, and the state has integrated their water systems better since that time, hopefully keeping us from that in the future. So that was a rare situation, and no one ended up being fined, but you started hearing talks about fire hydrants not having water in them and having to pump water out of ponds if there was still water in ponds to fight fires. And we're blessed in New Jersey by having relatively equitable distribution of rainfall during the course of the year, which doesn't always come, but it means that if it's missing this season, it can come next season.
Right.
As we've seen all too painfully in the last month out in California, it didn't rain since last April, and then it didn't, and it's normally dry till November. The problem was it stayed dry in November, December, and January, and thus when the fires broke out, they had an incredible amount of bone dry fuel to burn. But here, we can pull out of a drought any time of the year. Out southwestern U.S., it's got to be during the winter.
Got it. All right. Well, Like we said, jam-packed episode. I think we covered it all. Final word to you. What's going on with the state climate office?
Well, we're humming away. We're working on
Excuse
all
me.
sorts of different projects. Bless you. You can visit us. We're monitoring all those snow events that we've had that have been 2 or more inches. We put out a map and we list the totals by counties. We clean up the data, quality control it, so you can revisit any one of those snow events by going to njclimate.org and look to the top right corner of the page, and you'll find the link to find that information for the real weather geeks out there.
That's right. And there are many. Everyone who listens to this is a weather geek. If you're listening to this for a half hour, you're a weather geek.
Absolutely.
All right. So we will be back with you next month. We'll talk about February. Hopefully we can say we've gotten some rain or maybe even some good snow. We'll see. But until then, everyone, take care. Thank you, Dr. Robinson, for being with us. And we'll catch you right around the turn of February into March.